welcome to 20Q, 20 questions with interesting people from the LGBT community and friends. I am your host, the very handsome Tim Kirk, and this time our guest is raconteuse, bon vivant, woman about town, filmmaker, writer, and producer Stephanie Sellars, whose latest project, LLIFE LOVE, explores the sex-positive world of polyamorous relationships. Stephanie is our guest today, and I'm going to start today right now with the first question, a bit about your background. Where are you originally from and what was it like?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show, Tim. I grew up in New Jersey, but very close to New York City. So, I feel like I'm like a native New Yorker because I've been coming to New York City since I was very, very young.
Oh, very cool. I'm originally from Long Island myself, and I've been living here for over 30 years with my husband, and we're fellow New Yorkers. I would like to go to my next question, bringing me to the theme, I guess, is which life experience had the greatest impact on you?
Like as a child or as an adult? It's hard to narrow it down to one life experience.
Okay, so let's say as an adult.
Okay. Probably what I'm going through right now, separation and divorce.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Understood. Know someone who's doing that right now as well, and it's a very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it's forcing me to examine everything.
Yeah.
About my life and about myself and propelling me through transformation. So, I think like the most challenging aspects of life, if you're an open person, lead to that.
It's interesting too, because what you're saying reminds me of a lot of the themes in film itself. Mm-hmm. And I was just caught, especially by both Veronica and Daniel's final meeting in the film, when it seemed that they felt like they were very much alone, and it was a very melancholy ending, and it seemed that they both were searching, and I know that maybe the way the relationship went is there were agreements, and I think people agree to things in the passion or the experience, and maybe they don't follow the exact same letter as one character might to the other, and how they interpret that, or if they just agree with it, it's just because they were experiencing something new and everything was overwhelming to them, or maybe they just didn't really feel that level of commitment. Mm-hmm. I felt that Veronica seemed very, very sad at the loss, and Daniel he was somewhere at sea at the end. He was still searching, and he had a world open up to him, which I don't think he realized what existed, and that he was still chasing issues or desires, and he didn't know really what he wanted. So,
yeah.
So can I ask you what was, aside from your column, what was the genesis of the film, and how did you arrive at deciding the plot points and areas that you focused on? Because for me, there are three things that struck me. I figured inevitably New Yorkers will make the comparison to is the establishing shot of the Manhattan skyline and the music that was reminiscent of an older time put me in mind of Woody Allen. And mm-hmm. You sitting there typing, of course, Sex and the City, which I am not the best gay in because I never really followed. But also the masks and the parties reminded me of Eyes Wide Shut a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out all those specifics that reminded you of other films. And yeah, definitely inspired by all of those films, although I did not like Eyes Wide Shut. And that's part of the reason why I made this film, is as a response to movies like that are about this lifestyle that are not authentic. They're, not to disparage Stanley Kubrick, but that film did not authentically portray like this kind of world. I mean, maybe it was a whole other thing, but it gave the audience the impression that, oh, this is what these parties are like. They're very anonymous and kind of sort of alienating and formalized, and that's not the reality. So yeah,
yeah. It didn't seem genuine or authentic at all to me either. Also, the Woody Allen thing, the dinner or the eating, Daniel coming home to Veronica's house, reminded me of Annie Hall bringing Albie Singer to her home, and very much in one sense. It's just that there was reminiscent. It was evocative of that as well.
So yeah, it's actually I mean, that also is very close to home for me. I am a big fan of those old Woody Allen movies, and my husband, I mean, we're still technically married, is Jewish, and we shared that love of those old movies, and these characters from two different worlds coming together, and Daniel and Veronica are definitely from two different worlds, and the family scene is representative of the one character like being very much an outsider, Daniel being an outsider in that situation, and having trouble adapting to Veronica's family, but Veronica's also like kind of an outsider in her own family, so that's how they connect.
Many of the people I've actually interviewed that had the black sheep experience. And they spend a lot of their adult lives trying to reconcile their issues.
Yes, I believe there's a black sheep in every family.
Yeah, oh yeah. I just came from a large family gathering. My sister passed away last month, and we had a memorial for her over the weekend. And an extended family, and it was very queer friendly, positive. And there was a few people there who had bucked the trend, I guess, in the family, including myself. But I've been out for a long time, and I had nieces and other family members were there, but it wasn't that they were black sheep because they were a part of the LGBT community. It was because they had so, they had a lifelong history, which is less than conformist, put it that way.
Yeah, many things can make a black sheep.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be you're not particularly a good person, or you're just not conforming to what people.
Yeah.
So anyway, what would you say to anyone interested in an aspect of your experience? Meaning, if someone wanted to explore an idea or prospective opportunity based on what you can tell them, what would be the main thing to encourage or discourage them?
Well, yeah, I would say that if you're interested in polyamory or non-monogamy, watch my movie, and what I can tell you about my experience is to approach it with as much honesty as possible, but especially like honesty within yourself, like understanding your own needs and desires and like your reasons for exploring non-monogamous relationships. And because if you understand yourself, then you'll have a better time, understanding others. That applies to monogamy as well, but especially with polyamory, because the need for communication and boundaries and all these things that make a relationship functional and satisfying are they're, I think, intensified, or it's magnified in polyamory, because when you have more than one partner, it's just it's harder to like hide and ignore issues that may come up, right?
I think there's a lot of complexity there, and again, some people will have a different interpretation and level of commitment and engagement, and it's different for a lot of people. Now, me being gay man, having known so many people involved in all different types of relationships, and especially men who are parents, and they were parents through a heterosexual relationship before they had their awakening, and the experience is of people going through the awareness and coming to grips with who they are and their partners. Some of them have been very supportive, and some of them have been outright animosity. One fellow I know, he came out to his wife at least 20 years ago. He had grown daughters, and he said still they can just barely be in the room at the same time now. The understanding of the experience of how they came to grips with.
You said the husband came out to his wife?
Yeah.
Oh, was he gay or bisexual?
No, he was gay.
Oh, wow.
Married another man now, and but he has two grown daughters. Both of his daughters are, I think, they're approaching 30. I have another guy. He's a psychiatrist. He came out. He was 42 years old, and he came out and he told his wife, and she was very supportive. But I mean, myriad friends who had been married, and their kids are getting older, and their relationship has ended, and they are now in either a relationship with other men long term, or they're just single. But they had a tumultuous experience. A number of them did. It wasn't this, Hallmark movie type of thing where everybody understands each other. It was
yeah.
And I think some people, because of their marriage, particularly one particular person, his wife felt this intense sense of betrayal, and she became enraged, and she went down the list of every single thing she could. So he has had a very difficult time. He did not expect her to react that way for such a prolonged period of time. But
I can understand, how having that response is because it's I guess she didn't have a clue maybe that this was the case, or didn't see it coming, but to like it suddenly like, oh, you're not the person I thought you were, and you're like, why didn't you come out sooner? And like, you've been lying to yourself and lying to me this whole time. So it's not so much about like not supporting sexual identity, sexual orientation. I think it's, being hit with like, what? You're not the person I thought you were. It's like, wow.
I frame it as, because everybody does, especially when they first start a relationship, is you invest each other with attributes that you want the other person to live up to.
Yeah.
And I think there's an agreement if you get married and you follow a certain, especially a religion or whatever your belief system is, that when these bonds are broken, it crushes some people to the point where, they can't trust other people, or, and he is, he's not unapologetic about it, but he's definitely uh, uh, comfortable with who he is.
Right.
You know, and he does acknowledge that he had definitely deceived his wife.
So it seems like a lot of these examples of people, you know, that there was some disconnect within themselves. Like, I mean, obviously it's hard to come out and like, I mean, I came out to my parents as bisexual, and they're very conservative, and you know, they didn't shun me, but they did not embrace it either. And yeah, I mean, that's hard no matter what, but you know, it seems like in with all these examples that that these people were like hiding from themselves, or like there was some disconnect. They weren't being honest with themselves, and that's what caused a lot of the drama and the betrayal and the, you know, the tragedy.
And it's all inner conflict too, you know.
Yeah.
And they had to come to terms with it. And when they came to terms with it, you know, it boiled up and over. I have a friend of mine whose son came out, and she is absolutely the supportive mom, and she's open-minded and liberal, and she embraced her son, and he was so torn up, and she's like, "It's fine, it's fine, it's
Oh wow, yeah.
we don't care. It's like, don't worry about it." And he had just built it up into such, you know, it's just this terrible guilt, this onus that their son had placed on himself. And she said,
Wow.
not in the least bit, you know. And so you can see how so many people make it, and it's something that's they're living inside their head, and they're not being their authentic selves to themselves. So that's the thing that I see is the problem for a lot of guys, because they can't picture themselves, or instead of just dealing with what is and seeing what happens, they want it to be something that they've got an idea in their mind, and they can never live up to that.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a really that's a tremendous burden to put on yourself. Yeah.
So I guess let's say talk about the film, but I mean, next question is your most noteworthy achievement?
The film is one of them. I mean, I have two MFAs, two Masters of Fine Arts degrees, one in film and one in creative writing. That So it was during my time in film school when the idea for LLIFE Love generated. That's where I started writing the screenplay. Yeah, I'm very proud to have these degrees, and you know, kind of for me puts a stamp of validation on my talent, you know, my purpose, and I haven't yet made a lot of money on my art, so it's nice to have these degrees to acknowledge, you know, what I come here to create, and yeah.
Well, one of my previous interviewees was a friend and a former coworker. He has been a tech writer, but he has written a number of award-winning books and screenplays, and he gets some, you know, he's always posting about something. He's in the Venice Film Festival, he's in Cannes, and he gets a special award all the time. And he wrote a very well-received novel recently, and he told me trying to be a writer is like trying to be an astronaut.
Yes.
Yeah, making a living and doing that is the same thing, you know. So yeah, I can see that you. But he, you know, he's persistent, and he actually does really well. And he's Irish American, and a lot of this stuff is focused on the experience in Ireland and Irish American life. Yes, that's his perspective. But he's straight, and he's married, and you know, he's a really good guy. But you know, everybody has something that is their it's not their avocation, or it's their passion. And
Yes.
I think I hope so. I hope everybody has a passion. You know, I think most people do to some degree. They pursue it, and whether it's a profession or as a hobby. So let me ask you, what is the biggest personal challenge you have faced? Was it a personal injury, a seemingly overwhelming task, a personal or professional goal, or a difficult situation you had to overcome?
I think it's the same answer as maybe it was your first question, or but like going through separation and divorce, well, marriage, separation and divorce, that whole experience. Um, and during the time of the separation, I was also in a car accident. This was just like 6 weeks. No, it was like February when that happened, and it was like um, it was very traumatic because I could have died, considering what happened to the
Really?
vehicle. To the vehicle, yeah. And I was completely conscious the entire time. I didn't black out, and it was, yeah, like a near death experience in that way, like not knowing what how it was going to end, because the car was flipping around multiple times, sideways, and miraculously landed upright, and I didn't have I only had like very minor injuries, like nothing serious, like fully recovered physically. And the only lingering effect now is that I don't drive. I don't have a car, and I'm avoiding driving, and I'm afraid to drive.
I understand the PTSD
Yeah.
experiences, and I actually know somebody who was T-boned upstate New York, and he was flown from the car, and he kept consciousness the entire time, and he has this heartbreaking story, and he has become the most serene person I've ever met in my life because of his experience. But he just it's just it's such a life changing experience. We've had living in Manhattan, and even though we live in Chelsea, we've been robbed several times, and once we had a home invasion at gunpoint. And the PTSD is something that lingers for far longer than people think. The awareness of this and coming to grips with the impact it has on you is an ongoing process. The resolution is that you resolve to deal with it, not that it's over. So I
Yeah.
understand. Um, so what would you say was the transformational moment in your life? Was it a meaningful gift, or reason to belong to something, being a parent, good job, bad job?
Um, like when my husband and I separated, like started to experience a lot of inner transformation, just how that kind of kind of goes back to my childhood traumas, like just feeling like there were certain things uh, that needed to happen in order for me to heal all that, and like this separation was a catalyst for a lot of transformation. And yeah, I think major breakups can have that effect.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really, really have to do. Well, a lot of people do a lot of soul searching, and they think about a lot about their place in life. I'm at the point right now. I'm feeling like Willie Loman. The question of mortality starts coming into your life, and you start thinking about that differently. But I know people who have gone through breakups, and they don't even realize that they're giving away a little TMI when they have conversations, because as far as they're concerned, their conscious awareness of it has been reckoned with, but it hasn't really. And yeah, and they have to just curb their tongue a little bit, or remember the context of where they are when they make something, when they say something. It may not be something that other people feel comfortable with, because it's just so overwhelming to them. It's like they're assuming it's a universal affirmative for everyone.
And I think if you don't go through a major transformation after a breakup, you're just going to go. Well, most people they they repeat mistakes in subsequent relationships. So like they don't learn what they were meant to learn from the relationship that didn't work. And so they just end up in this cycle of, running into the same problems over and over again, whether they're attracted to the same types of people that trigger their flaws and faults that they need to confront. And if they don't want to confront them, then they'll just continue in that cycle, right? And I think, like, my film, you could say that Veronica is confronted with some vulnerability within herself that she never really faced before, that Daniel kind of brings up in her. And so you could say that she's like at the beginning of that transformation by the end of the film.
So that was interesting to me. It was Daniel, but also your friend, the character that Daniel, Maya,
yeah, both of them, yes. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that the issue was having a relationship with both of them, independent and together, and then having them seeing, because I see, like, look and see Veronica's face when she realizes that they're having a thing that she could be excluded from, and all of a sudden it hits her.
Yeah.
And you can see the look on her face when she's really, and I think she's just disappointed, or she feels a little bit alienated, and just, I think, surprised at the idea that they were continuing, or they were initiating, or whatever it was, the conducting a relationship that she was unaware of the depth, or how she was being excluded, and then she realized.
Yeah. It's just like, it's not explicitly stated in the film, but it's like fear of abandonment, right? I think a lot of polyamorous people, they if they either have very secure attachment where they don't have this fear, and that's how they're like able to sustain multiple relationships without a tremendous conflict and drama. But then there are other people who are drawn to it because they're avoidant, or afraid of commitment. And then they're like, yay, this is great, like freedom, yes. But then when the reality of a partner, like being with someone else more in being in a deeper emotional way, that is threatening. And then they're like, oh shit. Yeah. This is not how I imagined it would be. So I think, I think that comes across in the film, where like Veronica's like, yes, freedom, empowerment. At the beginning, I have all these partners, and everything's wonderful and empowering. And then there's someone who is a little too eager and wants to experience everything like for the first time, and it's too much for her. Like, whoa, no.
By doing this, you're opening up your own vulnerabilities to other people.
Yes.
And you see how much easier it is to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tremendous amount of trust in this type of experience, and it's one of the I think gay leather culture. There is experiences that people have, and this is not particularly mine, but I do know the word trust because of an activity that people engage in. That's a word that is a running undercurrent is trust, because it's really it's a dodgy type of thing if you're not completely at ease with the other person, if you don't know what they're going to do or how they're going to react, and lots of people get into things they think it's a little over their head, and they suddenly become afraid, and they pull back.
Yes.
Of an experience, because it's something that they just can't deal with. They don't understand. They didn't realize the Pandora's box they opened. And I think that's probably Daniel's thing. He had Pandora's box open, and he was exploring, and he was stimulated by so many things, and he didn't have any problem like hiring a sex worker or going off with Maya, and he didn't understand that the consequences of doing this, aside from his marriage breaking up, was that he was going to be alienated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I go back to what drives you, what gets you up in the morning.
Oh, to write. I have so many stories I want to tell, and I spent so many years struggling with procrastination and distraction. As I have a lot of creative gifts, and it's hard to choose. I'm very blessed in that way, but it also makes it like difficult to progress. So, and especially with writing, which requires a tremendous amount of, solitude and discipline, focus. And so I recently joined this online like morning writing club that meets on Zoom, a bunch of writers on both coasts. It's like 8 to 10 a.m. on the East Coast. And I'm not a morning person, and I usually don't make it on like before 8:45, but even so, like I'll keep writing past 10 a.m. and I've been very consistent with this. It's helped a lot. So that's been getting me out of the bed in the morning recently.
I think of two people, Ken Burns and Jerry Seinfeld, both talked about just every day you commit to a certain amount of writing, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ken Burns says 500 words a day or something like that. And
yeah, which is it's not that much actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Seinfeld just if you don't force yourself to write, even if it's bad, doesn't make a difference. The discipline of doing something and turning it into a habit that you just gravitate to on a regular basis, it prompts you to, and it elevates your skill, and whatever you do. Me personally, I am a retired chef. Then I started out cooking, flipping burgers at the beach, and I just didn't realize I had an aptitude to it, and I started doing it. And I'm a graduate of the French Culinary Institute. I worked in restaurants all over Manhattan. My hands, I don't have manual dexterity anymore, so I can't do it. But it's the desire every every second you're working to improve what you do. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. You really have to constantly apply yourself and want to get it down and keep getting better. And
yeah.
That's the thing that you have to do. Otherwise, you're what they call a hacker or a shoemaker. So also, I have to, before I go any further. Well, no, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's part of one of the questions. But the last question, not the last question that I had, the second to last question I asked before we get to yours is, what is your Zen?
Oh, cats.
Okay.
I love cats, and they are like little Buddhas because they are so present. And I think all animals are perfect meditators, and just because they're present, they don't have the monkey minds, like the narratives and the dramas that we have. So
we lost our pal. We had him for 17 and a half years.
Oh,
he was my baby. We got him at Biden when he was a kitten, and he was my best pal in the whole wide world. I still miss him dearly every day.
Yeah.
And, we just he chilled me out all the time, and I was so happy to be bossed around by him. I worked for him. I just, but I miss him all the time. We still miss him. And we haven't actually gotten to the point of getting a new, bringing someone home.
It takes time. I know. Like I just lost a cat a few months ago, and that was very hard with everything else that was going on in my life. But I have one with me now who was also in the movie. This cat, Minnie Munch is her real name. Her name is Lulu in the film, but she's like my soul kitty. She just brings so much comfort and bliss and happiness, and helps like bring me back to the moment.
Yes, I know. So you have a cat in the plate behind you? Is that a cat?
Oh, what are you seeing behind me on Yes, that is a cat on a plate,
Yes.
and my cat is right there. He's right there.
Oh, there you are. That's right. Hello, sweetie. And I noticed you had a cat mug, and you dressed
Yes,
the cat at one of the parties.
that's right. I definitely gave that, put that aspect of myself onto Veronica. Um, you know, the
I think it's a really good color for the character. Anyway,
yeah,
because you don't make a point of uh, discussing in detail the cat. It's just like it's the cat's there. Everything about cats is present in your life. So you're referring as a viewer that obviously you're a cat person.
yeah. But it's also, I think, narratively, I don't know if you interpreted it this way, but how like cats can be very capricious and territorial and but also very loyal, and these are like qualities that like Veronica and her experiences of jealousy, it's almost like a territorial cat, right?
Good insight. I didn't actually come to think of that as being cat related, but it makes an awful
Yeah.
lot of sense. It's interwoven into the psyche of
Yeah.
the character. Um, okay, so this is my last of my 10 questions, and this is the one that people have given me a wide variety of answers and it's very fun. Some have been very, very abstract, some have been very concrete. It's the threshold.
Oh, yeah.
No going back. You've left, the wall has been closed up behind you, and there's nothing you can do about it. How did you know when you arrived there? How did you feel to cross it? What was the significance to you? What did you leave behind? What are you glad you left behind? And what do you regret leaving behind? Big question.
I don't think there's only one threshold in life. That I'll for the sake of the question, I'll pick one, and that is like the first time I was truly in love and my heart was broken, and so that was between the ages of 20 and 22, early 20s, and so having never like been in love before, and to have that experience, like that's a huge threshold, right? Because you can never go back to not knowing what love is, right? and then and then to go from that to having your heart broken, like that experience is like, wow, like getting the rug pulled out from under you, like nothing in childhood compares to that kind of experience. And I mean, maybe it will bring up things from childhood, but just to it just I remember feeling like a loss of innocence. Like I can never go back to the innocence of yearning for love, and then having it and feeling like I was on top of the world, and feeling like, oh, I'm so special because of this experience, like almost like no one else understands this, which is ridiculous. But
I completely understand.
yeah.
I've been married. We've been married for 32 years, but I had my share of experiences before. I like to compare that to I of course New Yorker, so of course I took a stab at acting for several years, and when you have success and you're in a repertory theater and then you go out on auditions and you can see the body language, you can hear the actual the language of rejection, and you once you that's happened to you, you can see it coming a mile away, and you get sent
Yeah.
one after another after another after another. People tell you you're perfect, you're great, you come in, you read, You walk into a room, there's 50 people who look exactly like you, talk like you, sound like you, dress like you, and you're like, wow, this is going to be a few times. And then you go through the whole thing, and what they say, it's all boilerplated, and it's standard. But you can see it coming when you know that you're not going to get this, and
Yeah.
crestfallen, and you just realize, well, okay, see, but you can't be jaded and bitter because you have to have the enthusiasm for
Yeah.
the next thing.
It's really hard, and I've been through that too with the pursuing acting, and um I gave it up for the most part. I mean, that aspect of it, auditioning, and I acted in the film, and I act when opportunities come up, but it's not like my main profession where I'm engaged in the business of acting, like constantly auditioning, and I just felt like it was too much for me. I couldn't handle that amount of rejection and helplessness. But for me, and writing is more empowering because I'm doing it. No one can take that away from me, right?
Yes.
I mean, my writing may be rejected by magazines and publishers, but the writing is still there, as opposed, to that, as opposed to acting. Well, you can't. I mean, unless you produce your own work, and I think that a lot of people turn to that. A lot of actors turn to producing their own work because of this frustration that you're describing.
Yeah, and I found that one of the things that used to irk me was it never ends. It never ever ends with people. They're forever talking about something someone else said about them,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to having your own sense of self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
You have to constantly cite any minuscule thing that gives you that affirms you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the insecurity feeds is fed on something else, and you looking for something to validate you, and it's this monster that eats people up, and it's a terrible thing. You have to have a specific type of personality. You have to be very sturdy to take the rejection, and to maintain the optimism and the self-confidence and self-esteem.
I
So
mean, the positive side is that if you're able to sustain it, is that you develop resilience,
yes,
and you'll just be a stronger person, and be able to deal with whatever rejection comes your way, and not let it affect your like inner sense of identity and value. Like you're like your own value. You don't need other people to validate that for you. And I think the same thing with broken hearts, having your heart broken, is if you manage to fully feel the pain, and you don't avoid it or self-medicate, or run into a new relationship too soon. If I mean, I made a lot of mistakes after the first broken heart, and that's probably why, like, um later on, I had a lot of problems in relationships, but like this time I fully felt all the pain and the grief, and I didn't avoid it, and I'm more resilient now, and I know that I cannot base my value on another person, and just like Veronica ends up at the end of the film. Like, you have to love yourself before you can like really truly love another person.
you have to absolutely do that. That's something I learned a long time ago, was the absolute necessity of being able to not only love yourself but also understand there are going to be times where you're going to be alone, and you have to
Yeah.
how to like yourself. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being okay with being alone, like not feeling like you have to have a partner to be whole, to feel complete. Like you should already feel complete within yourself, and having a partner or partners is just adds to your life fulfillment. It's not. It's yeah.
A lot of your identity has to come from with, it's, I know so many people who, especially now recently with layoffs and jobs and stuff, especially in tech. I worked with a lot of people in tech, and so much they attached so much of their identity to the job that they had.
Mm.
Totally crushed. They just couldn't believe that they weren't the person anymore who held that sway or had that authority, or that people took them seriously, or anybody took them at face value. And suddenly you're just not that person anymore. And it's like
Yeah.
50 miles an hour and you stop, you're into a void.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to reconcile or how to be themselves
Without the job. I think it happens with parents too, like after their kids grow up and leave, and they've put all their identity into being a parent, and then if they didn't have a career or so I think it happens in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that too. I know people have done that too. And as soon as the kids get old enough, they've flown the coop, or they've left the nest, and realize that they have not worked on themselves in their relationships, or they drift apart, and it happens.
Oh, yeah.
It happens. It's a far more recurring theme than a lot of people want to acknowledge. And I also have my oldest friend. He's still mad. He and his wife are still madly in love with each other. They've been together for 38 years. So it's it's not.
Yeah.
Some people have just this great experience. They just truly love each other, and they crack each other up all the time. And it's great to see that in other people. But you also know that. I think the best thing is when people realize that it's over and to grips with it, because as opposed to, having to, you're in this netherworld where nothing is conclusive, and you really have to find what it is what's the substance. And if there isn't anything there anymore, well, this is what you're going to have to come to. Really.
Yeah. It's just sad when people stay in relationships out of fear of the pain of not being in that relationship, even though there is pain in the relationship. It's very, very hard to break up.
You're attached, and you really don't realize that you're holding on to something that's really not good for you.
Right.
Because you're so used to holding on to it, and as it's changed, you haven't been. It's been a continuum for you, so you're not seeing that. And when you realize what you started out with, how it started, how it went, then I think people go, oh, and then that's start having all these questions, and they have all these other issues that they have to deal with. But
ultimately you'll feel worse before you feel better. But it's like you have to go to the nadir. I think that was one of your other questions. You have to go to the nadir in order to rise up again. Yeah.
It's temper you. Aside from writing and making films, hobbies, avocations, pastimes?
Yeah, I love dancing. I have been dancing since I was 5 years old. My parents put me into ballet class, and I didn't become a ballerina, but I love dancing and being on stage. And then I did, after a little bit of ballet, tap and jazz for years, and then till I was an adult, and then as an adult got really into like partner dancing, like swing and Latin dancing. And so I've always maintained that, and I have the skills and I have the passion for it, and I just a lot of different styles of dancing, but I gravitate especially to swing dancing, blues dancing, and
I have a friend who actually does that. She actually does also retro. She does the 40s look, and she's even gone on to like the when the MTA pulls out the vintage trains.
Oh that's cool.
And then they go and they do a dance, and everybody
fun,
just dresses up in retro clothes, and she's very, very big on that. So my mom taught me to dance. I'm surprised at how many gay men do not know how to dance. I'm really utterly surprised that so many don't. I used to.
You mean like partner dancing as opposed to club dancing?
Because do that, but and it's happened to me. There was a place, I live in Chelsea, and there was a place down the street that's now closed. But while it was open, we were there one night, and a woman who was, say, in her early 60s, had recently retired and left the city, came back. You know, once you hit a certain age, you know you can't go to a nightclub. You know, you're too old for that. It's not your crowd. They don't want you there, and
Yeah.
you're going to be what you wanted. And she just said, "Does anybody know how to dance?" And I was the only person in this place that was crowded who did. So, and you know, I'm no great shakes, but I can shake a leg. And my mom taught me how to dance. And next thing you know, my dance card is filled with all these women who, and I very much enjoyed doing this. Until one night, we were there, and a crew of guys from a restaurant we used to go to came in, and one little guy he insisted on leading, and I had never, I had always been the lead. I was just very, very flattered. I was very tickled the fact that he put his hands this way. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was very cute. But so, and I very much enjoy doing it. And I think there's a lot of people just the recreational or the fun aspect of knowing how to dance, move your body is, as opposed to just that, you know, the club dance where you're just jumping up and down and doing over that thing.
It's a great way to connect with people too, and you don't even have to have much of a conversation with them, but you can connect with them in this other way through the music, through bodies, but not sexually.
Yeah.
And that's nice too, to like have physical contact with another person without the pressure of it like being sexual.
It was very pleasurable, you know, and plus I you know, you do commune with them, with each other.
Yes.
You know, it's unspoken. You don't have to. You're just enjoying each other's company, and you know, you make small talk while you're doing it, and it's nothing heavy, but it's just a very enjoyable experience, and it spreads like goodwill and good cheer, and you know, you a little bit of amity there when you're doing that. So I think that's.
I've also experienced like sensuality dancing with people, but where it's just like contained in the dance, right? And like we're both in it, but then it's not like, oh, like, do you want to go out for a date? You know, it's just in the dance itself, and I love that.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say that was my experience with this little guy who took the lead. I was very tickled by the whole thing. And, it existed only in that experience, you know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is. So my next question is, who do you read?
Right now, I'm reading a book by George Saunders, "Swim in the Pond in the Rain," where he there's a selection of Russian short stories, and he analyzes them, gives his take on them, and it's a really good book for writers, because it's all about like, why does this story work? Why is this story good? What is it about this story? Other than that, you know, I'm right now I'm reading a lot of self-help books, like because of what I'm going through. Books on emotionally immature parents, books on let's see what I have here, women who love too much. I'm reading heart wounds, like relationship books. But I read novels, I read memoirs. I read a lot of creative nonfiction in the past few years when I was doing the MFA in creative writing. I read everything.
I'm interested in a lot of history myself. I read a lot of history books. I've been reading a lot about my Irish background, and particularly focused on, because I've seen a few things, but I've been reading a lot about the Irish famine.
And
profound effect it had on the culture. And the thing about the last weekend was my sister, because she chose to let go. She was very ill and she let go. So she planned out the memorial, and the request was that it was to celebrate her Irish heritage.
Oh, wow.
We had a guy in a kilt playing the bagpipes, and we had step dancers there. And my nephew actually rented a portable Irish pub that was on a trailer and a hitch. And when he went inside, it was an Irish pub. And
Mm.
I'm very I feel almost guilty as to not knowing or not being as informed as I am now about the incredible experience that happened to so many people in that country. And at one point before the famine hit, it was 8 million people in Ireland, and after 1851, there was 3.5 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost more than half the population, and all the people who left, virtually all the people who left the country, knew they were never coming back to see their family again, and they were all teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And to see and to get that insight and to understand how it affected, and I have cousins in Ireland who are so much more lettered and aware and educated in American history than most Americans are, and we know virtually nothing about the history other than just the collective fable that people want to believe in. The Quiet Man type of story where it was cute and it was a horrific experience for so many people. And
Yeah.
Leon Uris, he and his wife had done a picture book. It's called Ireland, a Terrible Beauty, which was done, I think it was done in the 70s, and it was before the Irish turnaround in the economy. And you could see remnants of the past of the culture in these photographs. It was a photo essay book, basically, but it was beautifully shot. And you could see how people were so proud to hang on to these aspects of their culture because they survived. And we think of them as just being these little cute little places, but don't understand these things are the toughest, hardest places that people.
Well, some of my favorite writers are Irish. I went through an Irish writer phase in college. I did a thesis on Oscar Wilde and Yeats, and yeah, so big fan of
The Second Coming.
of the Irish writers, Yeats, Oscar Wilde. Who else do I have on my bookshelf? They were all men, though. I don't know any female Irish writers. But I did love the novel Brooklyn by Colm Toibin. Do you know this novel? Irish writer,
Yeah.
smart contemporary. It was published in 2005, maybe.
My mom.
When was it? No, 2008, I think it was. And it was adapted into a film starring
Neil Jordan directed.
Sarari, how do you say her name? The actress who was in Little Women, and so Sarah's Irish name.
I know it's
but about a young Irish woman traveling by boat to New York in the 1950s and living in a boarding house and falling in love with this Italian immigrant. It's a beautiful love story, and yeah, I recommend that one.
My mom loved it. It was very. I consider my mom's story. I'd like to write my mom's story. I consider her Copperfield's Ashes. She's a combination of David Copperfield and Angela's Ashes.
Yeah.
Torment. And when she came to America, she married my father. She had been living in England, and they met on Christmas in 1952, and they were married in September. Christmas 1951. They were married September 1952. My father was in the Air Force. And he was recalled after World War II. Yeah, World War II. And he didn't know if he was going to Korea or England. And he wanted to in England. He met my mother, took her back, and she said there were so many parallels between that character and her life. Living in Brooklyn, and they lived in Brooklyn before they moved out to the suburbs. It was heartbreaking for her and heart tugging. She loved it. That was very similar to her story. So
Yeah, just that whole experience of just trying to find your way in a completely foreign culture. That's still an experience that so many millions of people have today. Is all the immigration that happens,
and that's the thing. We don't understand it. It's one thing I don't understand white people.
yeah,
I don't understand. I don't understand how gay people can be so elitist to each other once they've grown up being rejected and bullied
right.
and then they do exactly the same thing to other people as soon as it happens to them.
It is hard.
White people I think like you came over, you experienced such a your ancestors went through such a torment, such an ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
Have no awareness of how you treat other people who are going through the exact same thing. And
Sure.
it boggles my mind that you can't extend this to other people, or that you just are completely unaware of this. You know?
Yeah, there are parallels, so like between the immigrant experience and the queer experience. I think because it's uh, you know facing discrimination, obviously hate, um, uh, not getting jobs, that that kind of competition. And
Yeah, I think for me, the idea, the marginalization of gay people up until, and I will say this, up until Clinton had out people in the White House,
mm,
nobody thought of you as being other than the stereotype. And being out, I remember I was working as a temp for Credit Lyonnais, and I was working in project finance, and they were all very nice. And there was two queer people in there as well. There was a queer woman and a queer man, and they were both very successful. And they were elitists. They were very much Pines people, or he was very much a Pines person, and they lived at the tippy top of the iceberg. We didn't. I wasn't. I was a pro as far as they're concerned. But one of the guys in the department, and I thought it was just I thought I gave off queer no matter what. And a grown man working as a temp after I couldn't work in restaurants anymore. You just wonder why this guy didn't come to the logical conclusion. But once he found out that I was gay, we got on an elevator to go up to the office from the ground floor, and he stood on the other side of the elevator against the wall as if I was going to infect him.
whoa,
Grimace on his face, and he this pained expression. I was just like, wow, really? And I was also I've been gay bashed several times, and I was gay bashed in places where I was like, this is Manhattan in the '90s, and I'm in a place where I'm inveterate at what I was doing.
mm-hmm.
I knew the industry so much better than these people who were new to this, and I was blackballed and I was gay bashed, and I couldn't understand how these people who were so primitive and tribal had got away with doing this.
Yeah.
And they are. So I understand.
I'm sorry you went through that. It sounds awful.
It's that's helped me grow as a human being too. Give me insight into what other people suffer. So.
Yes.
I definitely relate to other people's struggles, and I can see how the dignity so many people have, and I can see how they're able to maintain their sense of self-esteem. And when somebody, it's almost always out of ignorance, but they just don't, or they're emotionally, intellectually immature people, and how they're arrogance, I guess, in being and thinking that there is no repercussion, there's no consequence for their behavior, or that the people are just going to just accept this, being shuttered off in this at a second-class status. It's amazing to me. You look at people and you just can't believe you're looking at somebody say these things with complete impunity, and you look at the people who are suffering from this. And I have more respect for you now because you kept your composure and you didn't react because you know better. But still, I am devastated whenever I see this. But
I think it's usually stems from something that they fear within themselves that they just can't handle, and so they project it out on other people that, you know, trigger this fear in themselves, like you know, some latent queer desires of their own that they don't want to confront. And
that's more than I remember one day many years ago. I was out for a Sunday brunch, having a few drinks with my husband, and went to a bar that place we met, which was actually became a Mamafuku, but in the early '90s, it was very popular. And I went in there with my husband, and I see this guy standing at the end of the bar, and he's been playing softball, and he's a little bit liquored up, and he, I'm looking at him going, I know this guy. I went to high school with this guy. I walked over to him and talked to him, and I introduced myself, and it turns out we were classmates. And he immediately apologized because he was cruising me. And I said, "You don't have to apologize because we're both together." And he said, "Oh yeah, right." And then he proceeded to tell me all the people that we grew up with, who went to high school with, who were gay, who were closeted, and they were the worst bullies.
oh yeah, it's not surprising, right? Yeah.
You know,
Uh-huh.
what do you know? And then of course, here's the weird thing too, is either if they're not gay or because you are someone that they knew, in their mind we're best pals. So they think that we're all cool now, right? Well, I'll say,
oh, you mean the people who were the former bullies now
yeah,
that they
yeah,
know that you're gay, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm cool with gay people now.
yes,
Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
right? Well, I don't quite remember it like that, my life, but uh, that's what happens, the distant time, and they think their misperception or their recollection of things is, I didn't really like being threatened with my life,
Mhm.
and they don't remember it that way because they've had this moment of epiphany at some point in their life, or they're just, or they've come out.
Oh yeah, that's they often sometimes they don't remember the bullying that they do, because I confronted a bully of mine at a high school reunion, this guy who sexually harassed me for months and ended up becoming a big reality TV producer. And so at the reunion, I confronted him about what happened, and he didn't remember. He honestly didn't remember it. And he was shocked, and then we had a conversation like away from the party, um, and where I told him more about my experience and the details of it and how I felt and how it affected me. And he was remorseful, like, and he felt awful that he didn't remember and that he did that. And it was actually quite healing for me too.
Yeah, yeah,
um
I've had that too, where people have, I've expressed certain things, and there's loads of stories I could tell you about people who said, they had relationships with other guys, and when they were teenagers, and then when they go back to their hometown, the guy's married and has a family, and not only did they reject him out of hand, but it was one of those things where it is innocently, naively thinking you can just look somebody up and go to knock on their door and being met cold and having the door slam in their face. And there's that, and then there's the other thing where people who are become much more socially aware, and they think, because they think they're fine with themselves, that nothing that happened in the past matters. And some kid is walking around with this giant boulder on his back for years, deal, and they never.
they don't remember it, like it's like they blocked it out, right? Yeah. But I
Just
think the fact that but I think the fact that I shared this with him like really affected him, because he, like, I got a message from him like weeks later saying, I really feel bad about this. Is there anything I could do? And it's like, no, it was just enough to be able to talk to you about it. And
Yeah, I think that's for me. That was the thing, and I'm also at the age where life's too short, and people who I had disagreements with who have come around. I forgive. I can't forget. But I don't. It's not as prominent as it was.
yeah, it doesn't have the charge, or like it's like not weighing you down in the
Yeah.
same way as it used to. Yeah, I get that.
So, but, and it's just better for my own well-being and my own mental health to not carry that around.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Why you're the one carrying this? You're the one doing this. They're walking around fine. So,
Right.
yes, why should you do? Why should it shouldn't be the onus should not be on you to have something that you have an unresolved issue because someone was abusive to you or pushed you to the corners.
Yeah, you don't need to confront them necessarily in order to heal it within yourself,
Yeah,
because they may not be capable of hearing you, or apologizing, or whatever you might want from them, but you can like do that for yourself.
and
Yeah.
you've taken them by surprise and they've been unaware of this or they haven't dealt with it. And if you do, you're opening up a hornet's nest of their own issues.
Sure.
So what do you want? I don't
And
want
it might end up being more like re-traumatizing if they react badly. So sometimes it's better not to confront certain people.
Yeah, and I think also that's like and to some degree it's that Frank Sinatra thing. It's just that I just live your life the best you can, act as if nothing had happened, and just keep going. Because if you were to give it, and no one likes a baby, and if you carry this around, me personally, I'm living with 30 years later after being gay bashed, and I'm still dealing with a tremendous amount of physical issues after that happened. I was gay bashed right outside of the Spike too. I have to remember this.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where I'm not going to, first of all, I'm not going to complain and bring it up and make it a prominent aspect of my conversation with people, but I'm also just trying to be as nonchalant about it as my experience as possible, because I don't want this to be a sticking point in my interactions with other people. I don't want it to be the one thing that people think of me as. So,
Sure.
why would you do that? Because it reduces you to a caricaturization of yourself. And I really would rather not that be. And also, I just having this experience with so many gay people as they have this, instead of just understanding that the resolution is to be living in a continuum. It's not going to be over. This thing where you think you have closure. It's like you think it's maybe 5% of what all the entire issue is. Just as you're recognizing. So just it's going to come to you, and you don't want it to hit you like a ton of bricks at inopportune moments where all of a
Sure.
sudden you'll be paralyzed in a social or professional or any type of setting. That's not what you got to do. So you don't want to carry it around, but you also have to live your life. And
Yeah.
you have to do that. So I think that's one of the things that dealing with this type of oppression, marginalization, and a trauma that you had with other people, it doesn't serve you in any way to make this predominant.
I think it's great that when you can channel it into art, and or uh, artists who've experienced these kinds of traumas, queer artists, or like any artist, when you're able to take those traumas and like turn them into stories, turn them into art, to films, and to books, and to shows, comedy, even, that alone can be incredibly healing, and it's a way to share the experience in a way that's not a burden to other people.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to. You don't want to.
You're channeling it into
Especially if you could show
something else.
what something that people can take a lot easier than.
Yeah, but it also could be moving and healing to them
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
and then they relate to it and like see themselves and like, oh wow, I that resonates with me because I've had a similar experience and I feel like connected
I,
to this artist, to this film, or to whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah. Because the thing is for so many people is they need someone to address this in a way that they can digest it and take it in that makes sense to them, that crystallizes. It's something that they can deal with as opposed to being flooded with a whole load of emotion and other issues that are corollary to this. If you
Sure.
start off giving people an idea, that's beautiful part about comedy. It crystallizes the,
Mm-hmm.
the essence of something, and you get it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as
Mm-hmm.
you get it, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of people try to do. And
Then using your trauma as material for art, that's a different thing.
absolutely, to find a way to channel your experience and to do something that other people can relate to, and you're telling a great story. That's one thing. So next question is the strongest bond forged, personal, professional, social?
Well, between my husband and this cat over here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, um, I'm sure you understand as a married man, um, that kind of bond when you choose to marry someone is enormous. I mean, people people also marry for superficial reasons, or they marry when there isn't that much of a bond there. But for me, it was a 16-year relationship, so
Really.
longest relationship
Yeah.
in my life, and adult relationship, and yeah.
We have,
So
my dad had a saying in my family. My dad's, he'd be 100 if he was alive this year. And every time any of my sisters got engaged, he told all my brothers-in-law, no backsies. And
mm,
we all believe in that. So all six of us were married. I have three sisters, one just passed, and two brothers. We're all married, and we are people who, you're in it. Once you're married. So for better, for worse, or for whatever it is.
yeah,
Some of them have, we all have ups and downs, but the experience of being committed to somebody in us, instilled in us. I can't speak for everybody, but because we know plenty of people. Me personally, I could not believe when I came in, when I first moved into the city, at a meeting, I was the only person who was not the child of divorce. And I think that's just something that, my friends that I grew up with, all of them, everybody's married, stays married. They've been married, for in excess of 35 years. And
yeah,
it's just that just the way we grew up, how we just happen to have this thing. Well, there was a few divorces around us, but for the most part, we grew up with parents that stayed with each other, and that was just the thing. Is that it was very functional marriage.
yeah. Even though it's very common now. It's still traumatic for a child to experience divorce of their parents. It's very like my husband he experienced that. My parents are still married. Um, but my husband, I was his second marriage actually. So it's sadly will be his second divorce, I guess. But yeah, the whole, it's more than half, I think, more than half of marriages end in divorce. So it is kind of a miracle when they do succeed, and not only because the people are just afraid to leave each other, but because they truly are happy together.
Yeah, and the thing that got me so much was struck me so much. It was such a common theme was uh, not realizing how you place your parents on a pedestal, and then when they're divorced, that kind of evaporates, and they have a completely different disposition towards either or both of their parents than they had when they were together. And and say these things, I was so taken just by how could you say, my father's a jerk, or he kind of come around, or what he did to my mom, or people talking about substance abuse issues or whatever it is, and they're very, very matter of fact about it. It's something that would never be brought up in a polite conversation with me growing up. And they're so used to this, they're so jaded, and they get used to this at a young age. So they have a completely different experience than I did, and I had, I guess, much more of a babe in the woods until I was, over 30. I didn't have. It was something that I had to deal with. I had to actually acclimate to the idea that so many people were children of divorces. I mean, we talk about, holidays going one to one and having to go to another, and then issues that they had with their parents that I never had with my parents. My parents were very, very accepting, and they were loving until the end, and they were great to me, and I didn't have any of those issues. And they all talk about stuff that's just, it's so melodramatic to me, that they had to go through this, and it's an ongoing thing. And I never, well, I guess now a lot of people have, parents that have deceased, because everyone's getting on in life, or somebody has gone. But just the idea that you don't view your parents in the very traditional view that kids were brought up to think of, and it's one of those things that it just struck me so hard. I couldn't get over it, that they were so dismissive of their parents' new partner, or they didn't. They knew far more about their parents' foibles than we knew until they got older. You know about the dad likes to gamble, dad cheats, and stuff. I would never ever hear this stuff in conversation. And they were, by the time they were 18 years old, their parents had been divorced for 6 years, and they were used to, like, what.
Do you think that made them more cynical about marriage for themselves, or commitment?
Some not. Some very very happy to and eager to be. They found the right person. And
yeah.
The woman who I told you about, her son was so tormented. She's a child of divorce, and she met the guy she was in love with at a young age, and they were together, and they've been married for at least 30 years.
Wow.
And they're very happy, and other, they had a very, it's a matter of, they are cynical, they are,
Yeah.
they are
It
difficult.
affects everyone differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So next question is, what is your quest? The thing you must do at one point in your life, above all else?
Yeah, above all else is to write all of the stories that I have in my head, at least that are in my head right now, that novels, other, I mean, I'm sure I'll have more ideas when I'm older, but just to manifest as many of them as possible while I'm on this earth.
Do you think of the story being a complete story when you start writing, or do you just start and see where you're going? Somewhere in the middle of that.
If it's purely fiction, like not really inspired by my life experience, then that has a little bit more mystery to it. But I do tend to write, like, my fiction is often inspired by life experience, and so I am able to see like the whole arc of the story, but it's just more about how is it going to be structured, or how will it be fictionalized, um and what is, you connecting all the pieces together. That's more about the process. That's what the process is for me.
I thought, I was thinking of that watching the different parts of the film, especially when the characters were in the documentary setting and
Yeah.
coming from the parties and then going back to the personal life. And there's a juxtaposition there. And I was, curious as to how you formulated the ideas to present this and get this, because I don't know if this came from your experience.
Yeah. So parallels between me and Veronica are that, so Veronica's a blogger, sex relationship blogger, writes about her experiences. I did write a column, actually, which you mentioned at the beginning of our interview. I so took the whole column thing and updated it to blog. Some of the other characters are based on people I've known, people I was in relationships with, and like Veronica loves cats like I do. There are a lot of parallels for sure. I was never part of a documentary, so that's complete fiction. Although there was a time when there was a documentary filmmaker who shot a little like a sample scene that she was going to pitch to some networks or something, and I was a part of that. It was a bunch of polyamorous people in someone's backyard, and so that experience inspired the whole documentary subplot. So I just took that little experience and expanded it.
I'm also curious as to, in you're telling the story, there's got to be certain mechanics and there's certain points that you use to expand or continue the story. So when you get to that point, when you to move the story forward in your mind when you're writing, and you're drawing on personal experiences, how do you integrate that is always fascinating to me. How someone is able to do this, because I always think of the John Patrick Shanley telling the story about how easy it is to write a fairy tale. It's like Cinderella had two mean, cruel sisters, and that's it, and you accept it. The story goes on, and like but it makes the motor of the story has to keep on going. It's like the Michael Curtiz and Sam Wood thing. When you make a movie, just like start off and keep going. Don't explain. Just keep going.
Well, just film school, like all of my education, helped a lot with that, and like understanding story structure and like what works in narrative is not always realistic, or you have to take the truth from the reality and apply it to the narrative. But when how things tend to play out in real life are not as compelling to watch on screen. So it's like, in terms of timeline, like how, and the pace of scenes, or maybe it's more so in how conflicts escalate. Like in real life, you have two people sitting, like how we are, chatting for over an hour, and there's a lot of digression. There's if we were to put this in a movie and you know, the audience would be like, what is this about? I don't understand. And you know, like, where's the conflict?
Yeah,
where are the stakes? Where's the conflict? So just like knowing all this and having outside feedback as I was working on the script and then also during the editing of the film, that's a whole other story. That, you know, from the story that was in the screenplay is not the same story that you saw on the screen, as there were changes made in the editing process. We actually had to shoot additional scenes after the initial production happened in 2017, and then in 2018 we shot a whole other week of a couple of new scenes, because we realized that there were some holes in the narrative that were not apparent in the screenplay. And
I always think that people don't have to know what's on your mind, as long as you know the story and the high points and the low points. It's like, you have to know everything else, you know, but they do have to know how to follow the story.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can leave out a lot of the what led up to, because, you know, everything is, you know, that's what jump cuts are for. I like to go to the next thing, you know. But you know, when a scene ends, you don't have to explain what happens between the end of the scene until the next one. People are going to say either time has passed or something has happened, and then when you go to the next scene,
right. As long as the audience is able to make the connections, and they won't be lost.
Yes. So I want to keep it too much longer. I was going to go get a few more questions. Is there anything you would change about A, yourself for A for you, or B for another?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just working on healing a lot of myself right now, and just things that have held me back in my life, that have affected my relationships, and aspects of myself that need to be healed from, you know, old traumas. And and my relationship to money, but I don't think there's anything worth changing for another person. I think that if someone else wants me to change something about myself, then that's not a person I want to be with. Unless it's like it's not like an aspect of me, but more like a habit or something like that. I would be willing to look at and see if I could adjust it for the other person. Like, for instance, I have the tendency to be late, and but it's not like a part of my. It's not like asking to change, like oh, I don't like that you sit in a room and write. I don't really want you to do that. No way, I wouldn't change that. Or I need you to give up your cats. No, I would not change that. Like, things like that, no. But if it's like, you know, it really bothers me when you're late to meet me, or like we have to go somewhere together and you're always late. That was a problem in my marriage, actually. And it's very hard to break this habit, you know. It's a lot easier to arrive on time to virtual meetings because I don't have to, you know, get ready, get dressed, get my stuff together, and track the amount of time it takes to travel somewhere and all of that stuff.
I completely understand. And I'm unlikely to change something inherent about me. If there are things that are an acquired habit that I'm unaware of, or I can do to improve the situation, and it's usually something, you know, I'm doing something irritating, or or I'm unconsciously unaware of, I
Right.
saw something that really isn't really that important, and that maybe
Or like communication too, like, if I'm communicating in a way that's too aggressive or that's not kind, things like that. Yeah, I'm willing to change.
self-awareness and self-improvement. I think
Yeah.
the things I could do, you know. Okay, so would you say you are more freewheeling or structured?
More freewheeling in general, but I think I'm more structured than my husband, because that was another conflict in our relationship. He was too freewheeling, like just all over the place, scattered, and that's really we had a lot of conflict about that. And so, like, I'm freewheeling and in a lot of ways, and I'd say in my attitudes, my openness toward relationships and sexuality, and I love adventurous travel, like being spontaneous. Um, but it's like liberal politics. But in terms of my daily life, I'm more structured. Like, I have my little routines.
Yeah, I found out myself. I never thought myself, but I used to refer to myself as the soul of practicality at a job I had, because I discovered that I had the ability to get a whole lot more accomplished by having a routine that I would stick to. And I never thought that was really going to be something that I would be in, consciously employing. And even though I think of myself as somebody who prefers spontaneity, and I do but also at the same time, you know, due to experiences, once bitten, twice shy. That happens in some ways, and I think that there's a balance. I wish I knew how to strike, so I tend to be a little bit more, especially having cooked this for such a long time. That's structure,
Oh
and
yeah.
you know what you have to do in order to get something done. And I also say in order to a lot, because people don't think that something. They think a lot of people always think things take care of themselves. Like, no, they don't. You have
Oh, the timing of cooking is very important. If you mess up the timing of
to,
the structure, then things get burned, or they
preparation,
don't get cooked properly. Yeah.
and it's very analogous to construction work.
Mm.
Just you have to, you're putting things together. But that's something that I never ever thought of myself until much later in my life, and then it occurred to me that I thrive doing things structured, even though I've had this spur of the moment type of thing. In my mind, I am that person. I'm a free spirit.
Yeah, yeah.
You so what is now? This is a good one too, because I've had this too. This has been people have given me so many specific examples.
Mm.
What is the most grievous offense you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis from others? Gets under your skin, rudeness, sloppiness, carelessness, something you have no room for in your mental landscape, the thing that irks you, someone not closing the door or repeatedly mispronouncing something, stuff like that.
That's such a great question. I get really annoyed with people uh, who are on their phones, who talk on their phones in public places, like in trains or buses, in public transportation, uh, maybe in restaurants or cafes, but more like public transportation, where they're having a really loud business call or personal call, as if they're by themselves in the bathroom, or in their own home, just or in their office. No, they make the public place their office, and they don't care how loud they are, how long the conversation is, and that really irks me.
Elevators is the one that gets me.
Yeah.
Elevators is like we're all in this meeting now. Oh, okay. I
And
agree.
also people who don't turn their phones off in theaters, and they text in theaters and don't realize that the light of their phone is really bright and distracting from the screen. Like that really, I hate that.
I had one of my friends. I interviewed him. He works at Astor Place, and he would go someplace for lunch every day, and he would see people who deliberately parked in a no parking zone and in traffic jams, and it just got him. It just got so under his skin because
Yeah.
see them come into this place to get lunch, and they left this thing out there, and they were so inconsiderate, and it made his blood boil. So
Yeah. Same
know,
thing with me in a theater. Like I will go up to people and ask them to turn their phones off or to turn the light down or to hide their phone because it really distracts me. Like I get fixated on it and then I can't it takes my attention away from the show, whether it's a play. This has happened in theaters, like live theater, and also movie theaters, more so in movie theaters, people having the lights on their phones, texting. I'm like, why are you here?
yeah, I don't understand that either. I mean, I don't understand people who feel the important need to text while they're crossing the street.
Oh yeah, that is.
I have to be this. I have to be the hall monitor because I'm walking down the sidewalk. I'm walking down the sidewalk, and they're not paying attention where they're going, and you're
Yeah.
gonna straight into me if you
Yeah.
put that thing down. And also, when you're online at like Whole
Yeah.
Trader Joe's, it's like if you put that thing down, I don't know why you want to be here for longer. Just put
Yeah.
that down, and we'll get out of here real fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Making this some sort of ordeal. So,
Yeah.
so that's something that there's always something that bothers people. That's one of my things. Or of course, other people who get in your way when you're trying to look for the train on the subway. You know, hey,
Yeah.
that's my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so, what is your abiding passion? What do you care about most?
I mean, making art. I think this is a theme with a lot of my answers, just fulfilling my purpose, which I believe is to um, take my suffering and turn them into stories and art that moves people, that maybe makes a difference and somehow in small ways in people's lives. And
I can tell you, your film really stuck with me. I just saw that there was people who there was a certain amount of anguish and both Daniel and Veronica's characters, and I felt real empathy for both of them. But at the same time, I also felt a little Daniel. I was like, you're suffering, but we're all our own worst enemies. I think, and he showed that because to me, he was being his own worst enemy, not realizing that he had to come to grips with things because he didn't seem to understand that the consequences of his actions
right.
were making him be alone, was driving him away from people.
Yeah, that's why they're ultimately mismatched, because she has far more experience than him with polyamory, and she's almost at the other end where she's questioning, like, do I even want to keep doing this? I don't know. I don't know what I want. And he's just starting, and yeah, it's all about, he's very young about it. It's like,
yeah. And he didn't have an ethic defined for himself. I think.
yeah.
So of course I'm going to ask you, and I pretty much have an answer. Tell me about your relationship with the animal kingdom.
Oh, I am a huge animal lover, and of course, cats are my spirit animal, and but I love all animals. I grew up with a dog. I had a rabbit. Um, got married at the Bronx Zoo. And traveled to Thailand, Africa, where I've seen elephants and lions, and I'm going to Kenya again in May. Um, so yeah, I love wildlife. I'm very interested in wildlife conservation and how, you know, climate change is affecting these animals and that are that may go extinct in our lifetime. It's so sad to me.
I actually I went to Fordham and I lived about 4 or 5 blocks from the Bronx Zoo. And in those days, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, the Bronx Zoo was free, and I used to go to the Bronx Zoo every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Oh, wow.
And I've been there over 200 times, and I befriend with the elephant that they were trying to stop.
Happy?
I know her,
Oh,
and she used to come over to me because I would come up with a bag of chips, and she would just ignore everybody else, come right over to me, and she would nod, and she was able to take the tip of her trunk and flip it into my bag and suck out chips.
oh my gosh.
So, and she every time she saw me, and she would let me pet her trunk. And
Wow.
yeah, and I hadn't been there in 7 years, and I didn't realize. Just was so unconscious, and it was so immature. I came back and looked. She came right over to me again.
Wow. Because
Yes,
they have very powerful memories,
yes, they do.
elephants. Yeah, and they grieve when a family member dies. They have very strong like family structures, and I've seen like a tremendous number of elephants like all at a watering hole where I was actually very close to them, and this was in Zimbabwe where I was with a group and we went into this little shelter, this little wooden shelter that was, you know, completely open, but right near this watering hole, and hundreds of elephants came. So we saw the biggest males, like, you know, like feet, just a mere like 10 feet away, like swaying their trunks, like smelling us, and like little babies, and they were all drinking and just like observing their interactions with each other, and they and I, and they like people don't um realize how important these animals are to the earth.
The thing that got me most recently was seeing an entire herd of elephants come back to the same spot every year to honor
Yeah,
and save them. And
yeah,
they would come back. And yet,
yeah,
how do they know? How do they know to
right,
come back every year? And how did they? And it was just to honor this guy who saved their lives. And
yeah.
wow, that's amazing.
I think they know more than a lot of people think, like that they are spiritual beings, and not only sentient beings, but they're spiritual beings, and they you know, they are intuitive. And I know that my cat, like if I'm going through something, if I have anxiety about something, it's like she knows it before I'm even aware of it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
she starts to act up and um reflects and mirrors what like my emotions. So I'm
That,
always fascinated by that.
yeah, yeah. I'm a big animal lover too, and I think that the shame. I also was friendly with a giraffe too, believe it or not.
Oh wow, yeah,
It
yeah.
was
I fed some giraffes and
they're so cool. They
yeah,
just walk over to you and they're silent, and they just come over to you and they acknowledge you, and you're like, wow, this is the coolest thing. And just you know you're communing with them, and you just gives you a profound different take from that moment on, from when you become friends with an animal.
yeah,
Can't speak to you, and they you know you can't they can't do you any good, and they're still like you know, and like the only thing you have the obligation to
and
give.
we're the only species that has the power to change the course of the planet. Like they were here. um they've occupied land, and they've like they the crisis that we're in now, they didn't cause it. Humanity did. And then but we're the only ones that have the power to alter that course, and they're like at our mercy. And that's just I get depressed about this sometimes.
I know, like all the koalas in Australia,
Yeah, yeah,
burnt, like you know, it just and so many. It just kills me to see them, and just the cruel inhumanity to
Yeah.
inhumane, and that just bothers me so much about people. I don't understand how you could, but then I can understand people. That translates into how you treat other people.
That's true. It's not just about animals. Like it's a sign, and how a person treats an animal is a reflection on what kind of human being they are, and with human beings.
If they can't do anything, the best judge of character is how you treat people who can't help you.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
It's like if they are not in the position or able to do, and you can't gain anything from them, that's it. How you treat them is real who you are to me.
Yes.
And I think that the cruelty is unbelievable, but also I still eat meat and I still have to reconcile that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I've tried veganism. It's hard for me. I'm mostly vegetarian and pescatarian, but I don't eat poultry sometimes. I'm very selective with that and avoid dairy, but I'm not so strict that I'm not a strict vegan, but
Yeah.
kind of lean toward plants more.
I used to throw I used to have these parties which I was pretty well known for, Christmas parties at work, and when I worked at NBC. And one year I did the first year the party was a real smashing success. I had just put out all the food, and I turned around and I saw all of these friends of mine who I worked with who were Hindu, and I saw the look on their face because, and I was like, "Oh, you idiot!"
Yeah.
So that struck me like a lightning bolt, and then I consciously made sure that I made vegetarian and vegan food. And
just to have the option there, yeah.
when I would make huge mounds of chili nachos for people at one point, they I was made sure they asked, "You're making this again, right?" And I was more flattering than to be asked by people who don't eat meat to make sure. And I did a whole load of things that were cold stuff. It was easy. It's actually more challenging actually, to come up with something and understand how to cook something.
Yeah.
To prepare anyway.
Yeah.
So the last question is there anything that comes effortlessly to you, which is considered impressive to others?
I don't think this was one of my questions, but is there anything that comes effortlessly to me that's impressive to others? Maybe like speaking French.
Oh, my husband would love to talk to you. He's been studying for the last 4 or 5 years. He loves it. He just loves it. Have a conversation. Also, having been in the restaurant business, we know a lot of people with French in Belgium. So he just has conversations with them, and they're correcting him, or they're telling him that he's very good, or and he loves to speak French. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I studied it and was studied in France, and I became pretty fluent. I was fluent. I still have a fluency, but I've lost a lot of vocabulary because I'm not speaking it. I'm not practicing it, but I'm still able to be fluent in when I do speak it. And apparently, I mean, the French tell me that I have really good accent. So
Great. I was fluent in German at one point, and then I lost that altogether. I've had conversational German with a few people who are very kind, and they put up with I'm nowhere near any of that. So that takes us to the end of the questions. And before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that my film is available to watch on multiple VOD platforms. So please check it out. You can go to LLIFELOVE.com, and there are links there that will take you to the platforms where you can rent or buy the film. And also you can follow me on social media at _Stephanie Sellars on Instagram, and LLIFE LOVE movie on Facebook, and Stephanie Sellars on Facebook as well. And yeah, so thanks for having me on the show. It was a delight. So many great questions that turned into very interesting. These questions, just you never know where they're going to take you, right?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered, and once again, thank you. And I'm going to close as I always do. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time. And as the kiddies say, peace out.